How high-value women handle toxic people. A high-value woman doesn't waste her energy fighting battles with toxic people. She wins through calm, control, and class. She knows that emotional control is her greatest weapon, because once you let someone pull your emotions, you've given them power. Instead of reacting, she observes, she studies behavior, reads motives, and responds with logic, not emotion. Her boundaries are firm, clear, and unapologetic, because she understands that protecting her peace is an act of self-respect, not selfishness. She doesn't argue with toxicity, she disengages from it. Detachment is her strength. She refuses to absorb negativity or take insults personally, knowing that the way others treat her is a reflection of them, not her. And when someone crosses her line, she doesn't beg, explain, or seek closure. She walks away silently, because walking away is her final statement. A high-value woman doesn't try to fix toxic people, she rises above them, guarding her energy like the queen she is. How high-value women handle toxic people. Inspired by Evy Poumpouras, a high-value woman is not defined by her looks, money, or titles. She is defined by her self-control, boundaries, and emotional intelligence. When faced with toxic people, she doesn't lower herself or lose her composure. Instead, she uses strategy over emotion, observation over reaction, and silence over chaos. Evy Poumpouras, a former Secret Service agent and expert in human behavior, often teaches that strength is quiet, focused, and unshakable. A high-value woman embodies this truth. She knows that reacting emotionally gives power away, and that composure is the ultimate form of control. The first principle of a high-value woman is emotional control. She understands that toxic people thrive on reaction. They feed off emotional energy. So instead of snapping, crying, or arguing, she becomes still. Her silence speaks louder than her words. She knows that people lose power the moment they lose their temper. When someone tries to provoke her, she pauses, breathes, and remembers who she is. Her calmness is not weakness, it's her armor. Like Evy Poumpouras teaches, the strongest people are not those who fight every battle. They're the ones who know when to walk away, untouched and unbothered. Emotional control is her superpower, and she uses it wisely. Next comes boundaries, which she treats as sacred. A high-value woman doesn't explain or justify her limits, she enforces them. She knows exactly who drains her and who deserves her time. When someone tries to test her patience, she doesn't debate, she simply says no, without guilt or over-explaining. Her boundaries are not walls. They're filters that protect her energy and self-worth. She understands that it's not her job to accommodate everyone or tolerate disrespect. As Evy Poumpouras says, kindness doesn't mean compliance. You can be kind, but still firm. You can be compassionate, but still say, "Enough." Boundaries are how she keeps her peace intact in a world that constantly tries to shake it. Then there's observation before reaction, a habit that separates high-value women from the rest. They listen, they watch, they analyze. They don't react to every insult or manipulation tactic. Instead, they take a step back and ask, what is this person really trying to achieve? This level of self-awareness makes her unpredictable and powerful. Toxic people can't control her, because she refuses to play their game. Evy Poumpouras often reminds us that most conflicts are traps designed to get an emotional rise out of you. A high-value woman sees the trap and chooses not to step in. She responds with logic, not emotion, with grace, not rage. Another defining trait is emotional detachment. A high-value woman doesn't absorb negativity or take things personally. She understands that toxic people project their pain and insecurities onto others. When someone insults or undermines her, she doesn't internalize it. She recognizes it as a reflection of the other person's inner chaos. Detachment doesn't mean she doesn't care. It means she refuses to carry what isn't hers. She stays clear-headed, rational, and emotionally independent. Evy Poumpouras would say, "You don't have to react to everything that offends you. Not everything deserves your energy." And that's the mindset of a woman who protects her peace above all else. Finally, she knows when to walk away. High-value women don't chase closure, validation, or revenge. When someone shows consistent disrespect, she simply exits, gracefully and quietly. She doesn't argue or prove her worth to anyone. She knows that walking away is not losing, it's choosing herself. She understands that silence and distance can speak volumes. Evy Poumpouras often reminds us that walking away is one of the most powerful actions you can take, because it means you value your peace more than the approval of others. A high-value woman knows that she can't heal in the same space that hurts her, so she leaves, and she never looks back. In the end, how a high-value woman handles toxic people is not about confrontation, it's about mastery. She doesn't fight chaos with chaos. She rises above it. Her power comes from within, from her calmness, her standards, her detachment, and her unshakable sense of worth. She doesn't need to destroy anyone. Her peace, presence, and self-control are enough to disarm even the most toxic soul. Because the truth is simple: when you know your value, no one's toxicity can touch your energy. Boundaries are non-negotiable. How high-value women protect their peace. Inspired by Evy Poumpouras, one of the strongest qualities of a high-value woman is her ability to set and maintain unshakable boundaries. She knows that boundaries are not built from arrogance, but from self-respect. Evy Poumpouras, a former Secret Service agent and expert in human behavior, often says that confidence is quiet and rooted in clarity. A woman who values herself understands that peace is not something you ask for. It's something you protect. Boundaries define how others are allowed to treat you, and they serve as the invisible armor that keeps your emotional world safe. A high-value woman recognizes that not everyone deserves access to her energy, and she refuses to apologize for enforcing that truth. Toxic people often test limits to see what they can get away with. They push, manipulate, and guilt-trip others into compliance. But a high-value woman does not fall for these tactics. She has learned that when someone repeatedly crosses a line, it's not a misunderstanding, it's a lack of respect. So she draws her boundaries clearly and stands by them without flinching. She knows that saying no is not rude, it's responsible. It's a declaration that her time, emotions, and energy are valuable. Evy Poumpouras teaches that strength is about knowing when to be kind and when to be firm. A high-value woman can do both. She leads with grace, but she protects herself like a warrior. When a toxic person tries to guilt her with lines like, "You've changed," or "You're being selfish," she doesn't feel pressured to explain herself. She understands that the moment she starts over, explaining, she gives up her power. Boundaries don't need to be defended, they just need to be respected. A high-value woman knows that those who truly care about her will never make her feel guilty for protecting her peace. Those who resist her boundaries simply benefited from her lack of them before. And once she realizes that, she never returns to the version of herself that tolerated less than she deserved. Evy Poumpouras often emphasizes that how people treat you is a reflection of what you allow. A high-value woman keeps that lesson close to her heart. She watches actions more than words and uses people's behavior as data. If someone continues to disrespect her time or cross her emotional limits, she adjusts their level of access. She doesn't make dramatic announcements or seek validation for her decisions. She simply reduces contact, creates space, and refocuses on herself. Her boundaries are quiet but firm, gentle but unbreakable. They are her way of saying, "I respect myself too much to keep giving energy to things that drain me." Setting boundaries is not just about others. It's also about self-discipline. A high-value woman holds herself accountable. She doesn't break her own promises by allowing toxic energy back into her life out of loneliness, guilt, or nostalgia. She reminds herself that peace costs nothing, but chaos can cost everything. Evy Poumpouras' teachings on strength and composure align perfectly with this mindset. Discipline is freedom. The more consistent she is with her boundaries, the more powerful she becomes, not because she controls others, but because she fully controls herself. And when she enforces her limits, she does it with calm confidence. No yelling, no dramatic exits, just firm action. She knows that true power doesn't need to announce itself. When someone refuses to respect her boundaries, she quietly removes herself from the situation, emotionally, mentally, or physically. She doesn't chase people or try to prove her worth. She understands that walking away is not a punishment, it's protection. Evy Poumpouras reminds us that you can be compassionate without being a doormat. That strength and kindness can coexist beautifully when guided by wisdom. In the end, a high-value woman's boundaries are a reflection of how deeply she values herself. They are her love language to her own soul. She refuses to shrink herself to make others comfortable. She refuses to engage in emotional warfare just to keep people happy. She stands tall in her truth, calm in her convictions, and steady in her self-worth. Toxic people can no longer manipulate her, because her boundaries are her shield, invisible yet impenetrable. And that's the ultimate lesson Evy Poumpouras inspires. The moment you learn to say, no, without fear, you become untouchable. Because when a woman knows her worth, she stops negotiating with anything that threatens her peace. They observe before they react. The secret power of emotional intelligence. Inspired by Evy Poumpouras, one of the most powerful traits that separates a high-value woman from everyone else is her ability to observe before reacting. In a world that constantly demands quick responses, she stands out because she doesn't rush. She takes her time to watch, analyze, and understand the situation before giving it her energy. Evy Poumpouras, a master of behavioral reading and emotional intelligence, often teaches that awareness is power. A woman who observes first doesn't just see what's happening, she sees why it's happening. She recognizes motives, patterns, and hidden intentions that others miss because they're too busy reacting. Observation gives her control, while reaction gives control away. That's why a high-value woman chooses strategy over emotion every time. When faced with toxic people, she doesn't fall into their traps. Toxic personalities love to provoke emotional responses. Anger, frustration, guilt, or confusion. They want chaos because chaos gives them leverage. But a high-value woman refuses to play that game. When someone tries to trigger her, she doesn't react with rage or tears. Instead, she observes quietly. Like a mirror reflecting the truth, she watches body language, listens to tone, and studies word choices. She knows that people always reveal their true intentions if you're patient enough to observe. Evy Poumpouras' background in interrogation and human psychology reminds us that silence is not weakness. It's a weapon. A woman who stays calm when others expect her to lose control is a woman no one can manipulate. Observation helps her see beyond words. Toxic people often hide behind charm, compliments, or emotional manipulation, but their behavior always tells the truth. A high-value woman pays attention to consistency. She knows that someone's actions will always reveal more than their promises. So before she invests her trust, energy, or emotions, she takes time to watch. This doesn't make her cold, it makes her wise. She doesn't assume, she evaluates. Evy Poumpouras says, if you pay attention, people will tell you everything you need to know without you ever asking. This mindset keeps the high-value woman one step ahead in every situation. She's not suspicious, she's self-aware. Because she observes first, she rarely finds herself in emotional drama. She knows that reaction is the favorite tool of manipulators. When you react emotionally, you expose your buttons, and toxic people use that against you. So instead of giving them that power, she stays still. Her calmness disarms them. Her silence frustrates them. They can't control what they can't read. And she gives them nothing to read. Evy Poumpouras often emphasizes that power is not about domination, but about self-control. The more control you have over your emotions, the more influence you have over your environment. A high-value woman understands this deeply. She never lets her emotions dictate her behavior, especially in front of those who don't deserve to see her vulnerable side. This doesn't mean she suppresses her emotions. It means she channels them intelligently. She allows herself to feel but not to react blindly. When something upsets her, she takes a step back and observes her own response. Why did that trigger me? She asks. What lesson is hidden in this situation? This level of self-reflection makes her unstoppable. Toxic people can't throw her off balance because she knows herself too well. Her observation isn't just directed outward, it's inward too. She studies her own patterns, learns from her mistakes, and grows stronger with every experience. Evy Poumpouras teaches that emotional intelligence begins with self-awareness, and the high-value woman embodies that principle effortlessly. When she finally decides to respond, she does it with precision and purpose. Her words are few but powerful, her tone calm but firm. She doesn't argue to win, she speaks to be understood or to close a conversation with dignity. Sometimes her response is silence, other times, it's walking away entirely. But whatever she chooses, it's always calculated, never impulsive. She knows that not every action deserves a reaction, and not every insult deserves a defense. Her restraint is not weakness. It's mastery. Evy Poumpouras' lessons on composure remind us that the person who stays calm under pressure is always in control. In the end, observing before reacting is more than just a skill. It's a lifestyle. It allows the high-value woman to move through life with grace and wisdom. Unaffected by the chaos around her, she doesn't waste time explaining herself to those who misunderstand her. She doesn't fall into emotional traps set by those who want to see her crumble. She simply watches, learns, and acts when the time is right, because she knows that the one who sees clearly never stumbles in darkness. Observation gives her power, protection, and peace, the three pillars of true emotional intelligence. And that's why she wins, quietly and gracefully. Every single time. Detachment is a superpower. How high-value women stay unshaken. Inspired by Evy Poumpouras, detachment is one of the most misunderstood yet powerful traits a high-value woman possesses. Many mistake detachment for coldness, but in truth, it's the ultimate form of strength. It means having the emotional discipline to stay calm, balanced, and in control, no matter what happens around you. Evy Poumpouras, known for her mastery of emotional intelligence and composure under pressure, often teaches that true power lies in not allowing external chaos to disturb your inner peace. A high-value woman doesn't suppress her emotions, she simply refuses to let them control her. She's aware that emotional reactions can be used against her by toxic people, so she masters the art of remaining unbothered. Detachment doesn't mean she doesn't care. It means she cares intelligently. When she deals with toxic people, she doesn't absorb their negativity. She recognizes that their words and actions are projections of their own pain, not reflections of her worth. Instead of internalizing their behavior, she views it from a distance, almost like an observer watching a scene unfold. This perspective keeps her emotionally safe. She no longer asks, "Why are they doing this to me?" But instead, "What does this behavior say about them?" This shift is transformative. Evy Poumpouras often emphasizes that emotional control starts with perspective, the ability to separate what's personal from what's not. A high-value woman understands that she cannot control how others act, but she can always control how she reacts. That is her power. Detachment allows her to walk through conflict with grace. While others get caught up in drama, she stays grounded, steady, and unreadable. Toxic people thrive on emotional chaos, they feed off reactions. But when a woman refuses to react, she starves them of control. Her silence becomes her shield, her calmness her weapon. Evy Poumpouras once said that emotional composure is one of the greatest strengths a person can have, because people who can't control their emotions can be easily manipulated. A high-value woman refuses to be anyone's puppet. She chooses peace over reaction, logic over impulse, and clarity over confusion. Her detachment isn't arrogance, it's protection. She also practices detachment in relationships. When she loves deeply, but never desperately. She knows that clinging to people out of fear of loss is not love, it's insecurity. She values connection, but she also values freedom. Evy Poumpouras teaches that real confidence comes from knowing you can stand alone if necessary. That's the mindset of a high-value woman. She's not afraid to lose anyone who threatens her peace. She gives her best to others, but never at the cost of herself. If someone tries to manipulate her emotions or guilt her into submission, she doesn't fight to prove her worth. She calmly steps back. Her strength lies in her ability to detach from what doesn't align with her growth. Detachment also gives her unmatched clarity. When she's not emotionally entangled in every situation, she sees things as they truly are. She notices patterns, intentions, and truths that others overlook because they're too emotionally involved. She can read a person's character within minutes because her judgment isn't clouded by bias or emotion. Evy Poumpouras' background in reading human behavior mirrors this ability. When you detach emotionally, you observe more accurately. A high-value woman uses this awareness to make better choices in love, work, and life. She doesn't chase validation or approval because she's already validated by her own self-worth. That's why toxic people can't manipulate her. She's immune to emotional bait. Most importantly, detachment allows her to walk away without regret. She understands that peace sometimes comes at the cost of letting go. Whether it's a toxic friend, a manipulative partner, or a draining environment, she doesn't beg for closure, she creates it. Evy Poumpouras reminds us that walking away is not weakness but wisdom. The high-value woman knows that the energy she saves by not fighting every battle can be redirected into her growth and goals. She would rather lose a person than lose herself trying to keep them. Her calm detachment speaks volumes. It says, "I choose peace over people who don't value it." In the end, detachment is the high-value woman's invisible armor. It protects her from emotional chaos, manipulative games, and unnecessary suffering. It keeps her focused, composed, and self-assured. She's not numb. She's simply mastered control over what affects her. She knows that freedom isn't just physical, it's emotional. Evy Poumpouras' teachings align perfectly with this truth. When you can stay calm in the storm, you've already won. That's what detachment is. Freedom through strength, peace through perspective, and power through self-mastery. The high-value woman doesn't chase, react, or explain. She simply observes, understands, and lets go. Because once you master detachment, no one can ever take your power again. They walk away without explaining. The silent power of self-respect, inspired by Evy Poumpouras. One of the most defining traits of a high-value woman is her ability to walk away without explaining. This quiet act of strength isn't rooted in pride. It's rooted in self-respect. She understands that not every ending needs closure, not every conflict needs an argument, and not everyone deserves an explanation. Evy Poumpouras, known for her insight on power, composure, and emotional intelligence, often emphasizes that silence is one of the most effective responses in a world addicted to noise. A high-value woman embodies that truth. She doesn't beg people to understand her worth. She simply withdraws from anyone who cannot meet her standards. Walking away isn't about proving something, it's about protecting her peace. A high-value woman has learned that toxic people thrive on reaction and explanation. They want her to justify herself, to defend her choices, or to question her value. But she doesn't give them that satisfaction. Instead, she exits gracefully, leaving them wondering what happened. Her silence is powerful because it removes the fuel that toxic people need: attention. Evy Poumpouras teaches that control isn't about dominating others, it's about controlling your own responses. The moment she chooses to walk away without saying a word, she reclaims her energy, her dignity, and her control. She knows that explanations rarely change minds, they only drain emotions. Walking away without explaining doesn't mean she lacks emotion. It means she's processed her feelings privately and chosen peace over chaos. She knows that closure doesn't come from others, it comes from within. Evy often highlights the importance of inner strength, the ability to stay true to your values even when no one else understands. The high-value woman carries that lesson deeply. She doesn't chase clarity from people who confused her on purpose. She doesn't seek apologies from those who lack accountability. She doesn't plead for love from those who took hers for granted. Her silence becomes her final statement, louder and more dignified than any argument could ever be. When she decides to leave a situation, she does so with calm conviction. No drama, no bitterness, no shouting matches. She simply withdraws her energy and moves on. Toxic people can't comprehend that kind of peace. They mistake her calmness for weakness. But that's where they're wrong. Walking away without explaining requires immense strength, the kind that comes from deep self-awareness and emotional maturity. It's not easy to leave quietly when your ego wants to prove a point. But a high-value woman knows that the need to prove is a trap. As Evy Poumpouras often says, power is staying centered when everything around you is trying to pull you off balance. That's exactly what walking away represents. Staying centered in your own worth. This act of quiet departure also shows her confidence. She doesn't need validation, closure, or attention to feel seen. She knows who she is and what she deserves. When respect leaves the room, so does she, not because she's cold, but because she values peace more than approval. She doesn't send long messages or seek to fix people who refuse to change. She trusts that walking away creates space for better things to enter her life. Evy Poumpouras' philosophy of personal strength aligns perfectly here. Confidence is not loud, it's silent. It's the ability to leave without needing to explain why. And when she walks away, she doesn't look back. She understands that revisiting old pain only reopens old wounds. Once she decides a situation no longer serves her growth, she closes that chapter permanently. This level of detachment and resolve confuses toxic people who expect her to return or react. But she doesn't. Because she's already learned the lesson. Her silence tells them everything they need to know. You no longer have access to me. It's not revenge. It's release. It's peace disguised as distance. Evy Poumpouras often reminds us that peace isn't found in control, but in letting go. The high-value woman has mastered this truth. In the end, walking away without explaining is not an act of arrogance. It's an act of liberation. It's about choosing dignity over drama, strength over noise, and peace over proving. A high-value woman knows that explanations are for those who care to listen, and toxic people never do. So she saves her words, her energy, and her grace for those who truly value them. Her silence becomes her message, and her absence becomes her power. Because the moment she walks away without explaining, she sends the clearest signal of all. That she knows her worth deeply, and she refuses to waste it on those who don't. As Evy Poumpouras would say, when you know your value, you don't need to convince anyone else of it. That's the essence of the high-value woman. She doesn't argue, she doesn't chase, she doesn't explain. She just leaves, and her peace speaks louder than her words ever could.